Hello, fourth graders. It is Miss Owen, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about measuring angles. So, on Wednesday, you had an assignment, and some of you did really well, and some of us struggled. But I think I know the reason why you struggled, and I'm going to help you overcome that struggle today with a little bit more measuring angles. So, today we're going to talk a little bit about naming angles, which we did earlier last week, and then we're going to talk about what the general measurement of each of those angles are, which will help us reason to an exact measurement using a protractor. So to get started, we have 3 steps we're going to be using today, and those will be the same steps that you're going to take when you get to the quiz. So first step is identify the angle, which we have done this before, so that should be a review. The next 2 steps will be a little bit new. Maybe you remember these, but first we're going to estimate the angle, and then we will find the exact angle. And we're going to get started right now. So first of all, identifying the angle. On our lesson last week, we learned how to identify angles using 3 different names. The first angle we looked at was an angle that was small, made a small angle. And if you remember the actions, we made this by pointing to ourselves, and it made an acute angle because you were pointing at a cute kid. So this small angle is an acute angle. Now, the next angle we have is a right angle. And a right angle has a square corner. And if you look in these angles, there's a little square right there and right there. That is an automatic symbol that the angle is a right angle. And there's something special about right angles that we're going to look at on the next slide. So you can see an acute angle is less than a right angle. It's a smaller angle than a right angle. And then we have these angles that are larger than a right angle. And those angles, which are these 3, are called obtuse angles. So again, we have 3 angles. We have, let's change colors so we can look at these. We have an acute angle, right angle, or obtuse angle. So the next step is we have to be able to estimate in what general number range are our angles going to measure. So we are going to look at those 3 angle types. We have acute, right, and obtuse. And these are a rule that will be true for every acute, every right, and every obtuse angle. When we have acute, well, let's actually start with right. All right angles have an exact measure of 90 degrees. If it is a right angle, you automatically know that it measures 90 degrees. You don't even need a protractor to figure that out because all right angles are 90 degrees. So that means if our angle is smaller than a right angle or an acute angle, it's going to always measure less than 90 degrees. If it is an obtuse angle that is greater than a right angle, it will be greater than 90 degrees. And knowing that will help us reason when we are using a protractor. So on Wednesday, I believe it was Wednesday, you were introduced to a protractor, and maybe you've seen something like this before, but this is a tool we can use to find the exact measurement of an angle. Now, this is where we were getting confused, and this was a worry that I had, so I'm glad that we're able to address this. On our protractor, there are a few things to know. In the assignment, the protractor is already laid on the angle, but if we were to give you a protractor and you had one in your hand and asked you to measure an angle, we always want to line those perpendicular lines with the vertex of our angle. That's where the 2 points meet together, right? So if this were our angle, the vertex would be right here. So we would take that vertex and we are going to line our vertex up right in this middle part. So it would look something like this. I'm not going to draw it all the way out. Our vertex would be lined up where those cross at intersecting perpendicular lines. So the next thing we need to look at are these numbers. There are 2 sets of numbers, and this is where we were getting confused. The first set are these outside numbers. They go from 0 to 180 degrees from left to right. That's kind of the way we would read. But there's also another set of numbers that also go from 0 to 180 degrees, but they go from right to left. So the place where a lot of students were getting confused was knowing which set of numbers to look at. So today I'm going to explain how we can use reasoning to know which number to look at, as well as another way to look at measuring with protractors. So again, the common misconception was knowing which number to look at. So for this question, there were two possible answers. You could have put 60 degrees, or you could have said 120 degrees. That is what this line is pointing at. Both of those numbers are being pointed at by this line, but I have to know which one should I look at. I'm going to highlight my whole angle real quick, and I want to ask you, if we know a right angle is 90 degrees, and this is an obtuse angle, should my measure be greater than or less than 90 degrees? That's one way we're going to reason today. Before we get started, though, I want to show you one more way to look at this. I like to look at my ray that is on the bottom of my protractor. So I'm looking at this right here. Has an endpoint and goes forever in the other direction. So with this ray, it is pointing to the right. So I'm going to start with the set of numbers that starts with 0. So this one starts with 0. So I'm going to use these inside numbers to measure this angle. Now if this ray was pointing, let's draw it with green. If the ray was going this direction and this were my angle, so I'm trying to figure out this, because the line is pointing towards this 0, I would use the outside numbers. But again, let's get that away because we don't want to look at that. Because my ray is pointing towards the 0 on the right, I'm going to use the numbers that start with 0 on the right. So we're not going to focus on that way though. We're going to focus on reasoning using the 3 steps: identifying the angle, estimating the angle, and finding the exact angle. So we're going to look at this protractor, and I'm going to tell you right now, these do not line up exactly, and they're going to look the same on the assignment. So we're going to go to just the closest 10 or closest 5, depending on where the line is. On the quiz, it'll be multiple choice, so it should be a little bit easier to choose your answer. But know that the lines don't line up exactly. So the first thing we have to do is identify the angle type. We have 3 angles. An acute angle is less than 90 degrees, or a small angle. A right angle is 90 degrees. It forms that square, the vertex, and an obtuse angle is greater. So if I'm looking at this blue angle, I can see it is greater than a right angle, so the angle type is obtuse. Now, I know right angles are exactly 90 degrees. So is an obtuse angle less than 90 degrees or greater than 90 degrees? If you remember from this slide, all obtuse angles are greater than 90 degrees. They might be only 91 degrees, but that's still an obtuse angle. All the way up to, it could be 180 degrees. That is an obtuse, that actually is a straight angle, so scratch that. It could be 179 degrees. Anything that's greater than 90 degrees will be an obtuse angle. So let's go back to this slide. Because it is greater than 90 degrees, or it's an obtuse angle because it is greater than 90 degrees. So to find my exact measurement, I can use 2 things. I can use my knowledge and my estimate that it is greater than 90 degrees. So I'm going to look for the number that is greater than 90 degrees. I have 2 options here. I have 30 degrees or 150 degrees. Well, if I know that an obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees, I know it can't be 30 degrees. Because 30 degrees is less than 90. So 150 degrees would be my exact measure. If we were using the other strategy, I would look where my bottom ray is pointing, which it is pointing towards the 0 on this side. So I would want to look at the numbers that start with 0, and that would take me to 150 degrees. So let's see if I can do a better job explaining that on the next one. Again, the angle does not quite match up to a number, so we're just going to go to the closest. So my angle type, I have acute, right, or obtuse. Acute angle is less than a right angle, which makes the square. Obtuse is greater than a right angle. So I know that this angle is acute. So I want you to think for a second. If it is an acute angle, will our estimate be less than 90 degrees, 90 degrees exactly, or greater than 90 degrees? If it is an acute angle, will it be less than 90, 90 exactly or greater than. Hopefully you remember from that previous slide that acute angles are less than 90 degrees. So I'm going to look at my two measures here. I could either have 145 degrees or I could have 45 degrees. Now, knowing that I estimated that it should be less than 90 degrees because it is an acute angle, which of those two measures would be the most reasonable? I sure hope you're thinking that 45 degrees would be the most reasonable measurement. Now, other strategy, just so you can see it more than once, I'm going to look at the direction that the bottom ray is pointing, which again, it's pointing left. So I'm going to look at the numbers that start with 0 on the left, which would give me 45. Okay, we have two more examples we're going to talk through. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to just think through what type of angle is it? What is my estimate and what is the exact? And once you are done, unpause it and see if you got it correct. Okay, hopefully you took that seriously and you actually tried. Your angle type is greater than a right angle, so it will be an obtuse angle. Because it is obtuse, I know it is greater than 90 degrees. So if I looked at my two options, I either have 15 degrees or 175 degrees. Well, because I estimated that it was greater than 90 degrees, I know 175 degrees should be my exact measure. Now we can use the other strategy, but this time my bottom ray is pointing to the right. So I'm going to start with the 0 on the right, which means I would look at the outside numbers this time, which would take me all the way to, oh no, I did it wrong. It should be 165. I'm sorry. You probably caught that, but I did not. 165, 165. Again, I'm still making mistakes like always. It's the best way to learn though, so it's okay. We're going to look at one more. Before we start this one, these three questions we're going through are exactly what you will see on the quiz. You will have three different angles, but you will be answering each of these three questions about the same angle 3 different times. So you will have 9 questions total. Make sure you are doing it carefully. And if you need to rewatch the video, you can. But I'm going to explain this one more time, and then hopefully you are ready to take the video, or to take the quiz. You don't take a video. So here is my angle. And I'm going to ask myself, is it acute, right, or obtuse? Hopefully you notice that because it is less than 90 degrees, we would have an acute angle. So what should your estimate be? Should your estimate be less than 90 degrees or greater than 90 degrees? I actually gave you the answer if you were listening closely, which is another thing I do all the time. So acute angles are less than 90 degrees, so hopefully you caught on to that. So if I were to look at my two options, I either have 105 degrees, that would be this line right here, if I was in the middle, or I have 75 degrees. Well, if I know my estimate based on the type of angle I had, which was acute, was less than 90 degrees, I can choose the angle measure that was less than 90 degrees, which is 75 degrees. And the other strategy that I've been talking about is finding the bottom ray and which direction is it pointing. It's pointing to the right, so I'm going to start with the 0 on the right, which means I look at the outside numbers for this one, which would take me to 75 degrees. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you will rewatch it. If you were confused, reach out to one of us teachers. If you have questions, we would love to help you. We don't want you to be confused. We want to help you. So do not hesitate to send us a message in Canvas, have your parents message us, ask when you have a Zoom call, and good luck on your quiz. Do your best, read the questions carefully. Make sure you look at the angles in the picture. And again, they aren't exact, so just choose the one that's closest. Okay, have a good day.